So actually, this poem was a writing prompt that I got from a friend of mine who she didn't even really give me a topic to write about, but she was just like, "Can you write something that I can paint about?" So this poem is made for painting, and I'm not actually sure if she's finished with it. So she asked me to basically write about anything else other than what I usually write about. And my usual topics are love and, depression and feelings and weird things like flowers and the sun. And she wanted me to write about what it means to be a poet to me, and, maybe something that's just not as heartbreaking as the tragedies that usually make it to my papers. And after a few days of, thinking about it, I had this poem sort of like being downloaded into my brain, and I put it down and then I showed it to her and I was like, "What do you think about this?" And she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so perfect because this is literally exactly what I was thinking about, and it's so like weird that you were on the same wavelength of thought." The basic message that I wanted to communicate was that there is a whole life that creative people are living, and to me, the creative is anybody who creates any artwork. So any sort of creative work that comes, from the arts, those are the creatives that I'm talking about in this book. And in this poem, I basically wanna speak about what it sort of feels like to be a creative, and to understand that although a lot of creatives make things that are aesthetically pleasing, there's a lot of pain that comes from that, a lot of experiences that they may not speak about openly, and they then choose their art form to express themselves in a way that is not as scary. Though largely I'm speaking about myself in this poem, I tried to be as generic as possible. I was asked about the repeated phrase, I'm gonna call it, about how a nightmare and a dream, the construct or the contrast between the nightmare and the dream imagery, and exactly what that means. And that was really to show you that the journey of the creative is that it is the nightmare that is the dream. It is us taking bad things and bad situations in our lives and traumatic events and turning them into things that are beautiful, that are good to listen to, that are nice to look at, nice to hang in our houses, but the story behind where those things come from may not be as pleasing. I've gotten a lot of my story ideas and even some poems from nightmares that I've had, and I've woken up and I've written poems about it, and people will listen to my poems and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful poem." And I'm like, you have no idea the cold sweat that I woke up from that night when I was, dreaming or having a nightmare about this particular thing. And so people need to understand that the journey of the creative or becoming a creative has a lot of trauma attached to it. We write all of these gut-wrenching and hair-raising things and music and things that people are dancing to in the clubs and going through, the gist of their lives, just enjoying, the art form that we produce, but nobody knows where that stuff comes from. And a lot of creatives, I feel, have this need to make the world look beautiful, and that need comes from the fact that perhaps we don't see it in our day-to-day lives, or perhaps we acknowledge that it's there, but we also see that other people around us don't necessarily see the beauty in life. And so you want to sort of show people the magic that is all around them. I then, explore a couple of things, sort of painting this fantasy of a world, where I'm sort of like turning into a flower, and the flower that I use is a dandelion, which is almost weightless, of a thing that just sort of like is blown by the wind and grows kind of like everywhere. And I feel like sometimes creatives are perceived as dandelions, is basically the comparison that I'm making, as though they're people that are sort of blown with the wind, because we tend to get quite attached to a lot of different ideas because we are so, it may seem as if we're so all over the place because we want to explore and we don't want to be put in a box. And it's almost seems as though we are blown about by the wind, but it's a sense of freedom. We are free spirits, and so we kind of want to just experience as much of life as we can. And then there's a line where I say, I'm flying through the minds of those who heard before, because I wanted to highlight how, especially me as a poet, I have found myself able to relate a lot to people's struggles, as well as drawing inspiration from other poets and other creatives who have come before me, and drawing inspiration from their hurts and their heartbreaks and things that they have experienced that have opened my eyes to look at the world for what it is. Finding beauty in that, finding that I can dance to the sound of their heartbreak, Then I then sort of like, say that since I am looking through these spectacles of the heartbreakers and the ones that were heartbroken, I am able to find beauty and music in that, and I'm dancing to it, and through that joy I'm finding hope in life, hope in everything, that there is just purpose to life. Even though all of this nonsense happens, there is just hope in seeing that those who've heard before come through on the other side to sort of like lift others up. And this hope, I then speak about it being twinkling adventures in a city that I've never been to, and a secret love affair that I have yet to encounter. It's almost like these creations that are created by the creatives, to me, become a way of living. It's a way of experiencing life without having actually gone through the thing. So somebody can write a song about being in love, and through that song I can experience what it feels like to be in love and to be so, bewildered by this person, even though in my real life I haven't done that as well. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing that, poetry does for us, or any sort of artwork. And then I kind of bring it back down again to this idea of all of this being a dream, because it might not all be real, although a lot of artwork tends to reflect what our current world is like, and a lot of people relate to particular artworks because they may have gone through the same thing. I feel like largely my experience as a consumer of art and as a creator of it has been experiencing things that are not present in my life. So it's almost like dreaming. It's almost like dreaming of a particular occurrence and adopting it as my own experience.